Hi, it's Winton Churchill with the Barefoot Consultants here, and I'd like to welcome you to our Facebook Friday where we talk about all things freelancing. And for baby boomers, people 50 plus, got lots of good things to talk about today. We're going to talk about how you can tap non-career activities and experiences and wisdom for your profile. This is a time of year when many online freelancers are either just getting started or they're reviewing their profile to see what they've learned over the last year and what skills they might be able to drop into their profile and that sort of thing. So lots of good stuff to talk about today. Of course, we'd like to welcome all our live listeners here and also welcome those of you that are listening to the playback. And about 95% of our listens are on the playback. So you're a very important part of this broadcast, and we are happy to answer your questions and uh, when you're listening after the broadcast. So one of the things that one of the biggest misconceptions, I got it out, about working online is that the skill set that you have to tap comes from your career. And I've seen many people come through our programs, and what they are, the kind of work they're doing has little, if nothing, to do with their career. So that happens, and it's great because as somebody begins thinking about freelancing, especially somebody that's over 50, they're kind of in that mindset that it has to be an extension of their career. And that can be a very productive way to work and a great way to earn, but it doesn't have to be. It might be an extension of some of the skills that they used in their career, but something that comes along with some other set of knowledge that they might have. And today we want to go through what some of those other sets are. And so I've got 3 areas to look for additional skills that you may not know you ever had. And the first skill is in the category of volunteer work. Many of us throughout our careers have done volunteer work. We've done it because it was something we want to do. It might have been something that stemming from our career. I know that I worked volunteered for a number of organizations that were sort of professional organizations. Didn't get paid for, wasn't a lot of pressure, had a lot of fun, got to meet other people in my profession and working in that industry in the same geographical area. So it was very good. And so when you work for an organization like that, a nonprofit of one kind, an organization that advances your industry, a trade organization, that kind of thing, oftentimes you're involved in volunteer activities with that organization. And I want to tick off some of those because even when I say volunteer and even when I say professional association, sometimes people have trouble, sort of filleting that and understanding what the different layers of that kind of thing are. So when you're looking for skills, you might look for things like fundraising. And if you ever helped in the fundraising, you may have written fundraising letters, you may have helped manage the fundraising campaign. That is always something that is very near and dear to an organization's heart, their ability to keep money coming in, to keep the organization going, whether it's coming from dues, it might come from a charitable fundraising event. A lot of times I know the organizations I was in, even though professional organizations would from time to time sponsor charitable events, and then the money would go to a certain charity, that kind of thing. So that whole fundraising skill, copywriting skill, event organizing skill. There are people that work online that do exclusively organizing and managing events for you. So this is a possibility of activity. Other things that you may have done for an organization, you may have written an article for the newsletter. Most all organizations have newsletters. They communicate to their folks. In this day and age, it's all mostly email, and it's something that you have experience in, you communicate with, and you do that. And I see Bob, Herb, and Jackie coming in, attending from home, and Roatan, welcome. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Bob's down there taking amazing underwater photographs, and um, just somebody who has mastery of underwater photographs, and you definitely ought to take a look at what he's doing. And it's funny that just as I'm talking about the word newsletter, Bob pops up, because Bob and I worked at the same company. Let me see if I can do the calculation quickly here. About 35 years ago. And Bob and I hadn't seen each other since we both, went through that job and went into other companies and that kind of thing. But Bob used to create a newsletter, and he would share that newsletter with other people in the office that could then in turn send that to their clients, interested parties, that kind of thing. And it saved us all an awful lot of time. At the time in our organization, there wasn't a formal position called the person that makes the newsletter. The company wasn't big enough at that time to have that sort of thing. And Bob just took it upon himself to find interesting stuff, roll that all into a newsletter, put that out to his clients, and then shared it with everybody else so they could put it out to their clients. So it saved us all a lot of time. And that would be a great example of, back the program back then that Bob used was called Interleaf. It was a publishing program that ran on Unix systems. And of course, we were disseminating that as a PDF. So knowing how to write newsletters, how to collect content for newsletters, how to create a template for a newsletter, how to disseminate a newsletter, who's the list of people that are going to read it. Bob cultivated and acquired all these skills because he volunteered to do this newsletter, and that's the perfect example of that kind of thing. And a whole bunch of people were thankful to Bob in that office because he saved them a whole lot of work, and we were able to provide our clients with something that was informative and very useful. So let's move on to interest areas. And the category that I call this is kind of the family life interest area. Lots of things come from stuff that you do with your kids, for example. I think about my daughters were in Girl Scouts. We had a few camping trips along the way. I was in scouting as a kid and learned a lot of stuff with that about camping, and was able to apply that when we went on these camping trips. So that was fun. But that's also a knowledge base that I have. If somebody said, here's a tent and here's a sleeping bag, and, go camp in the bushes, I'd know a whole bunch of things to do about doing that. So skills come from different things that you've cultivated along the way. And of course, during the last year and a half, I haven't done much camping, but it's that's kind of a lifelong skill. It's a little bit like riding a bike. You kind of remember what to do, remember how to prepare, remember that it's important to put your matches in a waterproof container so they don't get humidified. So are there things in your past interest areas like scouting? Are there things that you've done with your kids where you've organized events, same thing, doing some fundraising. I remember organizing for my daughters, the oldest one who was in Girl Scouts, an email campaign to go ahead and sell Girl Scout cookies. And this was back in the 80s, so quite some time ago. And every year she sold out way more than her allotment of Girl Scout cookies, the amount that she was supposed to sell, because we created this email letter together. I made sure it was her voice talking rather than my voice, and sent it out to people that we knew and asked them to forward it on to people that they knew. And she would sell a few hundred of those cartons of Girl Scout cookies in a very short period of time. And so lots of skills learned and acquired through that process, and things to take into account. So there are potentially other activities like softball. Did you coach a softball team? Did you um, help the coach of the softball team? Uh, you know, train folks. If you've gone to that kind of event, if you've been involved in that kind of activity, you have quite a bit of knowledge. You prepare rosters, you organize the events, which were the games, of course. You adjusted the schedule. You might have done some sort of scheduling or that kind of thing. These are all activities that come within the scope of your personal interest and the things that we do in our private lives when we're away from the office. And the next area that I'm going to talk about is your hobbies. And one of the things, since we've been sort of locked down for now about 18 months or so, is I find myself watching fishing trips on YouTube. And it reminds me, because I haven't thought about going fishing, certainly haven't been fishing probably in 4 or 5 years. Lots of good fishing in Huatulco, but once you do that a few times, you're doing other things. And so I haven't done that in a while, but have very deep knowledge on fishing and currents and temperature fluctuations and how that affects fishing and that sort of thing. There are other people that have hobbies like coin collecting. I talked to somebody recently that inherited a small coin collection from their grandfather. They weren't too sort of crazy about that. Coin collecting wasn't their thing, but they got interested, learned quite a bit over a 2-year period. It's much easier to acquire knowledge today than it has ever been. And this is something that you really want to understand as you think about your skill set, is that in the old days, if I wanted to know about coin collecting, the way I would start is I would probably go to the library and I would check out a book or two on coin collecting, and then I might read them or I might not read them. And, I might get a little insight here, and I might do one thing or another there. I might buy a few coins of one kind or another, that sort of thing, or buy a bunch, go to the bank and get a bunch of coins and look through them all for the dates that were most valuable and that sort of thing. But now through YouTube, you're able to go on and come up to speed on topics very fast. You could watch, between now and next week, a dozen 10-15 minute videos on coin collecting and be more knowledgeable than probably most people that ever did coin collecting. It's the ability to learn in a very rapid way. There's no barriers. You don't have to go to the library. You don't have to pay money to watch YouTube. There's just all kinds of ways to come up to speed on topics related to your hobby. Because often when I talk to somebody, they say, well, gee, I did coin collecting, 35 years ago, and I wouldn't know anything about that today. Well, I would say that, probably 80% of all the fundamentals and understanding what's current about how to collect coins. You could refresh yourself in 2 or 3 hours of YouTube videos over a period of a month, and bring yourself right up to date on what's going on in the field of coin collecting, and that sort of thing. I remember working with a member that came out of a corporate America. He was an accountant, and he did accounting things all day, but he had been a passionate baseball card collector for his entire life. And he was able to take that skill of base uh, baseball card collecting and his knowledge of baseball and do things like proofreading for organizations that dealt in sporting memorabilia. I think one of the projects he did had to do with building a spreadsheet so a company could maintain an inventory of their memorabilia. And he just loved this stuff. And he was, sort of bathed in all the nuances of baseball teams and football teams and history of the sport and value of memorabilia and that kind of thing. And he just loved it. And if he would have taken the point of view that I can only freelance in an area that I know completely and have done in my career, he would have never had that opportunity to dive in and get that experience and bathed in the excitement of uh, a hobby that he loved. Another member that did that same thing, kind of had a corporate America job, and some people want to extend their corporate experience, and other people want to have nothing to do with it. And he was in the sort of the nothing to do with it phase. And this ties in with our point number one. He was a volunteer. And as a volunteer, one of the things he did is he volunteered, I think it was called, it was a police auxiliary in his community. He'd always been fascinated by police work. And his local police department had a sort of a community relationship program with local citizens, and they actually let citizens ride in cars and see what police people do and the kind of things that come up, and learn about how to lower crime in different areas of the city and all that kind of stuff. And so he had a rather long history of doing that in his local community. And when he went to go freelancing and we were working on his profile with one of our coaches, he realized that he had this really in-depth knowledge of the policing process. And that's one of the things that we featured in his profile. And he, in fact, started getting jobs that were related to that, his knowledges of police and criminal justice and that kind of thing. He was not degreed in this topic, but he had a lot of practical experience. He knew what police departments typically wanted to communicate to the community. And can you imagine that every police department we have in the world has a set of things that they'd like to communicate to their community, and sometimes they don't do it well because that's not their job right off the bat. That's not a core skill. And certainly there's many professionals in the community communication area within police department. I'm not discounting that, but there's nothing quite like a community member that can provide that influence to the police organization as they think about, how are we going to get this stuff across to the community. Many of you, like I did, worked for large corporations, and you get into a thing called groupthink, and everybody inside the organization just doesn't see it. It may have been worse when I was at Apple than any other company I worked with. I mean, at Apple, when we first started, everything we touched turned to gold and we could do no wrong. And what that created in some cases is kind of an environment where, we must be right because we thought of it, and of course I was in my let's see, I would have been in my early 30s then, 31, 32. And, uh, you know, looking back at my 31-year-old self, I would have a completely different set of advice, because Apple certainly had its ups and downs over the years and that kind of thing. And of course, they're doing spectacular now, but there were several times they almost went out of business. There were several times, in fact, that Sun Microsystems almost bought them. And I happened to be on the Sun side of that decision at that point. So it was a very interesting time. But the idea is to take these hobbies, take this knowledge, and see how you can apply it. Now, you may come up with a thought that you have the knowledge, but you may not completely understand how to extend that out. So I'm going to ask you for a little help. If you could type in the chat window an example of a hobby that you have now or had in the past, I'm happy to walk through and kind of line that out, how you might use that. And while you're typing something in, I'll give a shout out to Tom. Welcome, Tom. Good to see you. Hope you're having a good new year as we get started in the new year. And it's always fun to go through the holidays and reacquaint and catch up with people and see where they are and that kind of thing. So really happy to have you here today, and to a lot of our Facebook members, happy to have you here on our public site and on our YouTube site. So good to see you. So Tom brings up tech support. So he did tech support. That Tom, if you could let me know, was that something you did early in your career or mid-career or what have you? And I'll give you a minute to do that, because that kind of affects the answer that I give. But tech support is there was just a report at different points. Okay, that's good. All right. There was just a report that came out from, and I'm going to do my best to pull it up here. Take me just a second. From LinkedIn, that was actually, I think it was an Upwork report of jobs in tech support that have come up. And at a time, if you were like me, Tom, at in tech support, I started out in what could be called tech support. It was sort of customer service for Writer Central in the, I guess that would have been in the early, it would have been in the late 70s, actually, is what mid to late 70s. I worked for Writer Central, and we've all seen the yellow trucks running around, um, you know, one-way rentals. Big story in the news yesterday that all the rental trucks are going from California to someplace else. So apparently a lot of that going on. But in Facebook, and let me get over to our Facebook page here. One of our members, Robert, pointed out this whole this article that came along. Here we go. I'm getting to it. About here. Give it time to refresh. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to share this screen. Boom, boom, boom. Got it. And we are going to share a Chrome tab. And here we go. And Upwork is the world's largest, or the second largest, online network. I think it depends upon how you measure it. Freelancer.com posted more jobs last year. I think Upwork.com did more revenue. So, depending on the way you count it, lots of different things to show. Upwork unveils the 10 most in-demand skills for technology, marketing, and customer service. And tech support falls into the category of customer service. And a lot of these networks originally got started as technology sites 20 years ago. If you wanted a website built, you went on to a freelance site. If you wanted a program written, a database program written to keep track of your company's clients, you went on to this site. And so this is a good kind of a good article, just January 11th, so very recent. And a lot of the things you'll see on here, this is the 10 most in-demand tech skills. Now, most of you, I'm guessing, those are not of interest because you're not doing any of those things. And that's okay, because that's part of the picture, but it's not all of the picture. Now we start to get into more of what people can do. And obviously, we're on Facebook and we're on YouTube, and there might be something in the realm of social media marketing and that kind of thing, but that's not for most of us. But customer service has exploded, especially during this pandemic, because many of the ways that customers got service was they walked into a building and exchanged something, sent mail, ship something, bought something from a hardware store, all that kind of thing. And now all that's going on online. And during the pandemic, particularly, now we're back to things are relaxing a little bit, but many people just love the convenience of it and don't feel like they need to go to the hardware store. In fact, oftentimes what would happen to me if I was working on a project at home, I would get to a point in the project and say, wow, I need this kind of tool. And I would go to the hardware store and I would buy that kind of tool, and I would come home and it would take about a half hour probably. And then I'd go a little bit longer in the project, and then I'd figure out some other tool I needed, and that kind of thing. And it's very convenient. Now you go on to Amazon, you buy the tool, and they say, if you like that tool, you might be interested in some of these others. And I look at those and I say, yeah, I probably would need that tool. And I probably need that adhesive tape. And I probably need that wood glue in order to do what I'm about to do. And I just get it all at once, and I save all those trips. So I'm going to put this link in the chat area, and so that you can go to it afterwards. And those listening to this call afterwards can do that. Okay, let's see here. Chat doesn't want to cooperate. All right, we'll just go through it for now. But look at this. Customer support, customer service, email communication, phone support, email support, communication etiquette. This is one thing I hear over and over again from freelance buyers, is that people that are 50 plus know how to communicate over email. They have complete sentences. They give good directions. They have an awareness and a perspective on the total situation. Online chat support has become increasingly popular. I did an interview with one of our members a couple days ago. He had customer support background throughout his career. Never thought it would be anything he would be interested in, and he loves doing online chat. Customer service we thought of as a headset, a microphone, and sitting in a cubicle all day, grinding out questions, talking to angry to disgruntled people for the most part. And now it's completely different. You're typically answering emails, answering chat requests. Most of them are not in real time. Some of them are. This person happened to like the real time questions. They work 15 hours a week as a customer service person answering questions. It's something they can very much control. If they want to work more hours, they just tell the person that's doing the scheduling that they'd like to do that, and they're able to do that. Here's one, answering product questions, which is really, what's the difference between answering product questions and customer support and customer service and email communication. There's really not much difference. But answering product questions is something that if you've used a particular product, if you've been involved in a company that manufactured a particular product, you've been in an industry that used a particular product, you may have a deep knowledge of understanding and activity there. And so that is certainly an area to look to that. There's one here on the list that I don't like for baby boomers. It's data entry. This is usually a low bidder kind of a thing. And a lot of this work gets shipped out to freelancers in the Philippines and and India, where they're looking at pictures of uh, things that have been filled out, or they're just bringing Microsoft Excel files into a system. So that's probably not something unless you have a specialized skill there. And then administrative support is very interesting here. This whole idea of virtual assistant. We all are happy to find other people that can help us get things done, and having a good administrative support person is a real blessing, and it lets you focus on the things that you're absolutely best at. Right now, we had over 4 million people participating in the Great Resignation. They were employees that went back into their jobs and said, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go be a freelancer. And all those companies that lost those people have big administrative holes in their organization. So they're going to need to hire freelancers to backfill all those people that left. And all those people that left mostly have never run a business before, and they mostly were over age 50. I think it was 90% of the Great Resignation people are over age 50. And so something interesting to consider. And now for the first time, those people may have been very good at their job, but now they're, as a freelancer, they're running a business, and they usually are not good at bookkeeping. They are not good at client communications because they only had one client before. So they're typically not good at social media, and they need lots of help for freelancers. So that has created a very interesting environment with all of that. So if you go to the Upwork press release area, I've copied the link. I'm going to bail out of here and see if StreamYard lets me get back to where I wanted to be. There we go. Very good. Okay, we're back. We're back. And I'm popping the link into, let's see if I can trim this up a little bit. It's not going to let me do too much of that, but there we go. There's the link. And just shot it into Facebook and also over to YouTube. So everybody should be able to take a look at that. So happy to answer any questions you might have further about this. Customer service has just become a huge thing since the pandemic, since all that had to be delivered over a wire, basically. I mean, you think about how things are changed, and you probably don't do this, but I sit around on days and think about, well, how have things changed? It from our previous lives, there were so many more people walking into stores, walking into service establishments that just can't do that anymore. For the pandemic. I mean, think about we used to go out to restaurants. Thankfully, some of us are getting able to do that again a little bit now, and it looks like a lot more in the future. But this whole idea of home delivery of meals just exploded beginning with the pandemic because people needed the stuff. So lots of good new ways to do things, but it's it's reduced down to this. Many more communications have to go over the wire now. And the expectation of many people seeking customer tech support, customer service, is not necessarily that they're going to get that in real time, but they are going to get a comprehensive answer in email that they can follow and resolve the issue that they have. So lots of good stuff too as we come out of the pandemic. My prediction is that we are going to see an event not unlike the baby boomer boom after World War II that occurred. A period of prosperity, innovation, people doing things in new ways, and of course a boom to freelancing, because freelancing is one of those things that is very adaptable to the way companies like to work. They like to bring in people to do certain jobs when they need them. They like to not have to pay them when they don't need them. And so if you do two convention events a year, it's better to bring in a really smart, really experienced convention person and have them manage those two events in your company. And when you don't have those events going on, that person is off helping some other company manage those events. Very efficient way to do that. So with that, I'd like to bring this call to a close. I'd like to thank everybody for participating. Look forward to any questions that you might have in the chat window. Just pop them in there and we'll answer those during the week. And we'll see everybody next week. Take care. Adios.